Welcome to Moments in History channel. Today, we're diving deep into the history of one of the most magnificent and influential empires you've probably never heard enough about, the Sassanid Empire of Persia. For over 400 years, from 224 to 651 CE, they were the powerhouse of the ancient world, a beacon of culture, in the final great dynasty of Persia before the rise of Islam. This story is packed with epic battles, incredible art, and a legacy that still echoes through time. Our story begins in the early 3rd century. The land we now know as Iran was ruled by the Parthian Empire. But after centuries of power, the Parthians were weakening. Internal strife and constant wars with the Roman Empire had taken their toll. It was in this climate of uncertainty that a local Persian ruler from the region of Fars, a man named Ardashir I, saw his chance. Ardashir was a descendant of a figure named Sassan, hence the name Sassanid. He wasn't just a rebel, he had a vision. He wanted to restore the glory of an older, legendary Persian dynasty, the Achaemenids, the empire of Cyrus the Great and Darius. In 224 CE, Ardashir I faced the last Parthian king, Artabanus IV, in a decisive battle. He won. With this victory, the Parthian Empire crumbled, and the Sassanid Empire was born. Ardashir crowned himself King of Kings, or Shahanshah, a title that oozed power and ambition. His goal was to create a centralized, unified Persian state, a stark contrast to the looser, more feudal structure of the Parthians. He wanted to build an empire that was not just militarily strong, but also culturally and ideologically united. And he had the perfect tool for the job: religion. One of the most defining features of the Sassanid Empire was its official state religion, Zoroastrianism. This ancient faith, with its concepts of a single supreme god, Ahura Mazda, and an eternal struggle between good and evil, became the ideological glue of the empire. The Sassanid kings saw themselves as the guardians of this faith. Priests, known as magi, gained immense influence, and grand fire temples were built across the empire. These temples, with their perpetually burning flames, symbolized the purity and eternal nature of Ahura Mazda. This state-sponsored religion created a powerful sense of shared identity among the Persian people and legitimized the rule of the Sassanid kings. It gave them a divine mandate to rule and to expand their righteous empire. But an empire isn't just built on faith, it needs a solid administration. The Sassanids were brilliant organizers. They divided their vast territory into provinces, each governed by a satrap. But they kept a much tighter leash on these governors than the Parthians did. They established an efficient and complex bureaucracy to handle everything from collecting taxes to managing public works. This organized taxation system was crucial. It funded their massive army, their ambitious building projects, and the lavish lifestyle of the royal court. They also heavily fortified their frontiers, building a network of walls and forts like the famous Gorgon Wall, sometimes called the Red Snake, to protect their borders from nomadic tribes in the north and east. Now, let's talk about the Sassanid military, because it was legendary. For centuries, the Sassanid Empire was the arch-enemy of the Roman, and later, the Byzantine Empire. These two superpowers were locked in a seemingly endless cycle of war, a sort of ancient Cold War that would occasionally flare up into massive, devastating conflicts. The backbone of the Sassanid army was its cavalry. And at the heart of this cavalry was the elite unit known as the Klibanari. Picture this: a warrior and his horse, both completely encased in heavy metal armor. These guys were the ancient world's equivalent of a main battle tank. They were trained to charge in a disciplined, tight formation, shattering enemy infantry lines with the sheer force of their impact. Armed with lances, swords, and bows, they were a terrifying and versatile force on the battlefield. The Klibanari were so effective that their tactics and armor heavily influenced the development of European knights centuries later. The Sassanids also made extensive use of war elephants, which added another layer of shock and awe to their military might. The Sassanid era is often called a golden age for Persian culture, and for good reason. Their art and architecture were simply breathtaking. If you've ever seen pictures of intricate silver dishes with detailed hunting scenes or royal portraits, chances are you're looking at Sassanid metalwork. They were masters of this craft. Their architects built monumental palaces, like the one at Ctesiphon, the empire's capital. The most famous feature of this palace is the Kasra, a colossal vaulted archway that remains the largest single-span brick arch in the world today. It's an absolute marvel of engineering that still stands, a silent testament to their genius. Sassanid culture wasn't created in a vacuum, though. The empire was a major hub on the Silk Road, that ancient network of trade routes connecting the east and west. This position brought immense wealth, but also facilitated a vibrant exchange of ideas, art, and science. Sassanid art shows influences from Rome, India, and even China. In turn, Sassanid motifs and styles spread far and wide, influencing Byzantine and later Islamic art. This cultural cross-pollination was actively encouraged by some of the most famous Sassanid kings. The empire reached its absolute peak under rulers like Shapur I and Khosrow I. Shapur I, who reigned in the 3rd century, was a brilliant military commander. His greatest claim to fame was capturing the Roman Emperor Valerian in battle in 260 CE. This was a humiliation of epic proportions for the Romans. To commemorate this victory, Shapur commissioned massive rock reliefs at Nakshi Rostam, depicting him on horseback with the defeated Roman emperor kneeling before him. It's one of the most powerful pieces of political propaganda from the ancient world. Then about 3 centuries later came Khosrow I, often known as Anushirvan, meaning the immortal soul. He ruled in the 6th century and is considered one of the greatest Sassanid kings. Khosrow I was a reformer. He overhauled the tax system to make it more fair and efficient, strengthened the army, and was a great patron of arts and sciences. He famously welcomed Greek philosophers who were fleeing persecution in the Byzantine Empire, establishing the Academy of Gondishapur. This academy became a renowned center of learning, attracting scholars from all over the known world to study medicine, philosophy, and science. It played a crucial role in preserving ancient knowledge and translating important texts from Greek and Sanskrit into the Persian language. But as with all great empires, the seeds of decline were sown at the height of its power. The endless wars with the Byzantine Empire were incredibly costly, draining both empires of manpower and resources. In the early 7th century, the two powers engaged in a final, apocalyptic war that lasted for over 2 decades. The Sassanids, under Khosrow I, initially had stunning success, conquering much of the Byzantine East, including Egypt and the Levant, and even besieging Constantinople. But the Byzantines, under Emperor Heraclius, mounted a miraculous comeback, pushing the Sassanids all the way back to their heartland. By the end of this war in 628 CE, both empires were utterly exhausted. The Sassanid Empire was particularly broken. Its treasury was empty, its provinces were devastated, and a series of internal power struggles led to a rapid succession of weak rulers. The social and political structure of the empire began to unravel, and it was at this precise moment of weakness that a new, dynamic force emerged from the Arabian Peninsula, the early Islamic Caliphate. Fueled by their new faith and brilliant military tactics, Arab Muslim armies began to push into Sassanid territory in the 630s. The weakened Persian army, a shadow of its former self, was unable to stop them. In a series of decisive battles, most notably the Battle of Al-Qadisiyah in 636 and the Battle of Nahavand in 642, the Sassanid forces were shattered. The last Sassanid king, Yazdegerd III, became a fugitive in his own empire, fleeing from one province to another until he was finally assassinated in 651 CE. With his death, the mighty Sassanid Empire, which had stood for over 400 years, officially came to an end. The fall of the Sassanid Empire was a pivotal moment in world history. It marked the end of ancient Persia and paved the way for the Islamization and Arabization of the region. But the legacy of the Sassanids did not disappear. In fact, it's impossible to understand modern Iran and much of the Islamic world without understanding them. The new Arab rulers were deeply influenced by Sassanid systems of governance. They adopted Sassanid administrative techniques, court etiquette, and even their taxation systems. The Persian language, though now written in an Arabic script, survived and flourished, eventually becoming a major literary language of the Islamic world. Sassanid art, architecture, and cultural traditions were absorbed into the fabric of Islamic civilization, creating a unique synthesis that defined the culture of the region for centuries. So, while the Sassanid Empire may have fallen, its spirit lived on. It created a durable idea of Persian identity, a concept of kingship, and a cultural richness that endured through conquest and transformation. The Sassanids were the bridge between the ancient world of Persia and the medieval Islamic world, and their story is a powerful reminder of how, even in defeat, a culture's legacy can continue to shape the future. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this journey back in time, please hit that like button, subscribe to Moments in History channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next historical deep dive. See you next time.